Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing coverage of A Game of Thrones, bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of Molestown.
I was really trying to find Molestown on the map, and it wasn't there, because I guess it's like so insignificantly not far from the wall that it like doesn't need to be on there, which
Also,
is funny.
would a town be on the map?
Sometimes they put towns there.
Ooh, voice crack.
Sometimes. Listen, Cam and I have been sick for it feels like a month, so
Yeah.
if we sound funky on this, you're just gonna have to deal.
But we're pushing through because
Yes.
today we've joined together to talk about Jon Chapter 9, the final Jon Snow chapter of this first Game of Thrones novel. Before we jump into the recap, Maggie, spoilers for everything in the books and the show.
Perfect. So this is Jon number 9, and Jon has decided to desert. This is what he's going to do. He's going to leave. He's going to leave the wall and try to join Robb in an effort to avenge the death of his father. So he's leaving well before dawn so that nobody will notice that he's gone, and he gets about as far as Molestown. But before he leaves, he does run into Sam, and Sam basically says, "Please don't do this. You don't have to do this, sir."
And Jon says, Petrificus totalis.
He basically, "Neville, I'm really, really sorry." That's genuinely what happens.
Sam wearing the little pajamas.
Yeah, he with his little teddy bear slippers. Anyway, Jon basically runs him over and says, "No, I have to leave." And he
kills him.
What if? No, he's fine. So he gets to Molestown and he takes a break to stop, eat a quick little snack, and also Ghost had come with him, but Ghost had sort of fallen behind the stride of Jon's horse. So he's
How did the snack sound?
It sounded delicious. It's like cheese and biscuits, right? And then
And an
a little apple. I'm telling you, I've been having lots of cheese snacks
When?
lately.
Be honest.
Late at night, 12 a.m.
Maggie's been indulging in night cheese.
Listen, if you never had night cheese, it hits different, okay? You go downstairs and you open the fridge and you don't turn on any lights. It's just the glow of the fridge, and you pull out a little piece of cheese and you snack on it.
Was it a Kraft single?
No, it wasn't a Kraft single. It was a sharp cheddar.
Like you're better than Kraft
I do
singles.
love a Kraft single. Okay, I'm sorry. We're getting distracted. He's taking a quick break, and because Ghost has not caught up with him. And then he hears some people approaching, so he goes and hides in the bushes. Lo and behold, it's his buddies from the Night's Watch. It's Pip, Gren, Toad.
The night's cheese.
Yeah, it's the Night Cheese buddies. Pip, Gren, Toad, and Halder. And they are looking for Jon because Sam blabbed to them. And so they're after Jon to get him to come back. And finally, they find Jon. They confront him. They sort of convince him to keep his vows. It's a really beautiful moment. They all chant the vows together. It always gives me goosebumps when they do the Night's Watch vows. And so Jon goes back with them begrudgingly. Internally, his plan is to stay with them for a couple more weeks and then try to leave again. He's not at all committed to staying. So they get back, and the morning comes, and Jon goes to give Old Bear his breakfast as usual because he's sort of stuck doing his old duties.
What's he having for breakfast?
I don't remember.
It's a bowl of plums.
Yes.
It's fried bread.
That's right.
And it's 2 eggs over hard.
Delicious. Like hard-boiled eggs. Yeah,
Yes.
delicious.
And
Anyway.
some ham.
Yes, there's always
A lot
ham.
of ham.
Lots of ham. I
I
guess
don't care for ham.
No, I know you don't.
Cutting it up with a dagger, feeding it to some pigeon.
When you're at
No.
the wall, you just do whatever a pigeon. He's a raven. A pigeon? Okay, anyway. But so Mormont says, how was your ride? He immediately knows that Jon tried to desert. He's like, it was fine. I'm sorry. I'm not afraid to die. You can kill me. And basically Mormont says, listen, if we got rid of every guy who tried to desert in the middle of the night, we'd have nobody. So you have to kind of go through that motion, and it's fine. And Mormont starts to tell Jon about how things are really starting to get bad beyond the wall. And he says your place is here. And he even brings up the fact that you've got the blood of the first men in you. You've got this direwolf that seems to have this supernatural power to find these undead creatures. You're meant to be here. And he also says that he is going to go beyond the wall to sort of deal with the stuff instead of waiting for it to come to them. He's going to take a crew beyond the wall, and Jon is going to go with him. And Jon is finally convinced, okay, yeah, my place is here. And that's where we leave things.
Yeah, it's goosebumps are a good place to start here because this was such an exciting chapter. We've been talking about this the last few weeks as we've been wrapping up our POVs, where it feels like some of them are just setting up what's to come in the next book. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we're kind of cracking open the door at the end here with the Beyond the Wall. But just as much of this chapter is about the arc that Jon has had in this book. It's as much a resolution as it is a transition to the next part of this story.
I think you're right, yeah.
And we both kind of have, I think we're jumping off from the same point here, with our theories today, and I want to start with Ghost,
Okay.
if that's okay.
That sounds great. I love Ghost.
So I have a question here, because
Okay.
this was another experiential chapter. I loved how much time we spent in John's head. There's not that much plot here. There's still a couple scenes, but most of it is just within John's head. He's thinking about, okay, if I do run away and I get to Rob, will he even accept me?
Right.
Should I go back to Winterfell? Would they accept me? So much of it is within his head. I loved that the full runway opening up for just character work and introspection. But within those action scenes, there was something Ghost did that was weird. Because Ghost is following John. John's on the horse and Ghost... Sorry, still sick. Ghost is following behind. And then he kind of loses pace. And there's a moment where John outpaces Ghost, and he and the horse are running through, and they kind of get the Ichabod Crane. They're all spooked out in the night alone.
Sure.
And then all of the Night's Watch brothers show up. And my question is, why does Ghost not attack the Night's Watch brothers who are attempting to bring John back to the wall?
Yeah, I loved this too. And John even acknowledges after they've sort of caught him, he says to Ghost, "Oh, great help you were." I think there's something in Ghost where he knows John's supposed to go back. And it feels a little bit too easy of oh, well, he knows where John's destiny lies, but I kind of think that's what's happening.
This is my hunch too, but I want to unpack it because I think it has some very strange implications.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you compare it to the way Ghost intervened when the undead guy was attacking Old Bear, he jumped in to defend John because he's a dog.
He's a loyal dog. Yeah.
And there was a guy attacking his master.
Yeah, very
So
normal.
he jumped in to defend him. If he knows that John's on the horse and they're fleeing and they're going elsewhere, someone stopping them, especially when John has his sword out and he's holding all of these 7 guys at bay, those are now threats in his master's way. So if I'm trying to... I know why, because I think you know why as well. It's kind of a plot armor thing of he knows where the narrative is supposed to go.
Right.
But I don't know why he does this, because if Ghost's foremost or exclusive allegiance is to John, then these are impediments. These are threats to John's life. So the only explanation for why Ghost doesn't slaughter these guys, maybe because he knows them? Because he lives at the wall?
I was going to say, he knows these guys really well. They're part of his household. They're part of his pack, right? Yeah, John is his main defender, or the person he defends most, but he's really familiar with these guys, and he knows that they're John's friends. These guys have never tried to attack John. They've never been a threat. And dogs also, wolves, animals, they have a way of sensing danger and threatening energy, and these guys are not coming to attack John. They're not about to hurt him.
But the sword's out.
Yeah, but dogs don't know what swords are.
He can see that John is panicking.
Yeah, he probably can sense John's fear, but he also may sense that these people are not a threat. He has this sense about him that, I think, you know what I'm saying?
There's a level of reasoning here that goes beyond he's a dog.
Right.
He's doing too much analysis of the situation. Because if it is just that he knows them, so he's not attacking them, well, one, that kind of clashes with earlier in John's kind of hazing rituals when a lot of these guys threatened to kill John, and Ghost had to scare them off.
These guys didn't, though. It was other guys.
He knows to be skeptical of Night's Watch brothers.
Sure, okay.
But if it's just that Ghost knows these guys, so he's not going to attack them, then okay, he's just a dog. But if it is that if Ghost somehow intellectually disagrees with John's chosen course of action, then he's way more than a dog.
Well, yeah.
He's something else entirely, almost to the level of being human. And this is where I want to look at this kind of character inflation that I think is happening with Ghost here. We've been talking about sigils, people becoming their sigils, the power of these living, breathing representations of these almighty houses. Ghost is way more than a sigil here. And I think if he has this level of thoughts, feelings, and reasoning, then he's really a standalone character, almost on the level of Tolkien's dragons.
Oh, yeah.
Where he can... Ghost can't talk, but he can do everything else.
Yeah, he can reason and possibly even understand like human conversation.
And looking at the fantasy you and I have discussed on this sort of granular level, the closest corollary, I think, is Tolkien's dragons, someone like Smaug.
I like that.
And importantly, this means Ghost has a level of sentience and intelligence way beyond Dany's dragons. There is no corollary within A Song of Ice and Fire for the type of characterization and intelligence that Ghost is demonstrating here.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't remember how the dragons are characterized in the books, because I also remember I've only gotten to halfway through Storm of Swords in the past, and so the dragons didn't get very old. So I don't know what they're like when they're like full grown and how sentient and smart. I mean, we see some sort of intelligence and supernatural, thought in Fire and Blood. Like, I won't give any spoilers away, but they're like dragons that seek out their riders like long after they've been separated. There are dragons that seem to like cling to power in a certain way.
Yeah, but the ravens do that.
Yeah, okay.
This is something else. Because you're right, we've seen old-ass dragons in Fire and Blood, in House of the Dragon. They're not advisors. They're not disagreeing with their masters like this.
Sure.
It's something else.
Okay.
There are moments of like, oh, you're like bowing to the fucking hippogriff. You didn't earn your place to ride me properly. Yeah. But it's not like this. It's not, I disagree with your course of action.
That's fair.
I mean,
and I see an active threat that you think is a threat, and I'm interpreting it as not. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to make the joke first, yes, this is the logical conclusion of my argument a few weeks ago that John is a horse. But
I forgot about that.
Zooming out to make a more genuine point, I think there's an interesting effect happening here, and it goes beyond Ghost. There's this effect of kind of wandering sentience. There's this inflation happening across Westeros, and I think it reminds me of the dragon births and this weird kind of surrealism that's falling over Dany with the tent and this crazy dancing witch lady and trading blood for deaths and rituals and kids, and her kid turned out to be a weird dragon, and there are all these dragon eggs and they're warm, but then Jorah picks them up and they're not warm. Bran's got this weird shit happening with the ravens. Jon's fighting reanimated corpses. There are, I mean, almost literally ghosts running around half of our plot lines right now.
Yeah.
The veil is growing thinner in this story. There's a sense of real fantasy and fantastical elements, a real magic that's on the rise in this world. The veil between the living and the dead. The veil between man and beast. The veil between am I a bastard, am I a Stark? The veil between ice and fire. I think you can extrapolate this weird ghost observation into the larger kind of blurring effect that's happening across this book. And there's no better character to host or anchor this phenomenon than Jon Snow, who's always existing on these various knife edges. And we know from the fact that he'll die and come back, the fact that he'll be Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and then he'll do all these other things and kind of be king for a second. And we know that he will jump all these fences. So I'm taking this chapter, which is the conclusion of Jon's arc in the first book, as more and more confirmation that yes, he's the prince that was promised. But also, now that there's a power vacuum since Ned was beheaded, Jon Snow is our franchise protagonist.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. And as that makes total sense, as, Old Bear is saying now, like, the veil between, like, the veil is in the wall, the veil between Beyond the Wall and Westeros, that's also thinning and getting more and more messy. And we have to cross that veil, cross that wall, go beyond it, and take care of business. So I think that makes total sense. I like using Ghost as our way into that. And one thing I was remembering was in our very first chapter of this book, brand number 1, when they find the direwolf puppies, Jon is the one who recognizes the importance of them. He says to Ned, your children were meant to have these pups, my lord. He is the one who recognizes the like prophetic supernatural nature of these direwolves, like before anybody else does. And he says that before they've even found Ghost. He says that when they've only found 5, and he's excluding himself from the Stark children. And so even then he's recognizing it. So I think that makes total sense here.
To that point about timelines, my memory of Dany's dragons for the next couple books or seasons of the show is that they act like puppies or babies. But lest we forget, Jon discovered the direwolves at the beginning of this book.
Yes.
So Ghost is still young.
Yeah, he's like maybe a year old.
And if
Yeah,
you think of
it's not
Dany's
fully grown.
dragons, halfway through Clash of Kings, they're not demonstrating this level of intelligence.
Yeah, that's true.
Ghost is a different thing.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they also just like the direwolves age and grow faster than the dragons do. Yeah, I just
don't
mean
remember
like
Shaggy Dog ever doing this, but yes,
well, no,
I know
I
what
just
you
mean like physically, like they grow up much fast. Like the
Yeah.
dragons take years to become fully sized. It's not quite the same with the direwolves,
Sure.
but yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I was also paying attention to Ghost here and what he's doing, and you're right. There is this supernatural way of him redirecting Jon to his fate, and I was trying to figure out what is it. I mean, part of it is Ghost, but what else is it that really gets Jon to figure out where he's meant to be? That's his whole arc of this first book, is what is my place? Where am I meant to? Who am I? Where am I meant to go? Am I a Stark? Am I a bastard? Am I a secret Targaryen? That thought hasn't occurred to him yet, but it's always in my brain. And my question, I think, is about Ned, because it seems like Ned's death is Jon's turning point. And I'm wondering if could Jon have fully accepted his place at the wall if Ned hadn't died? Like, would there always be that element of doubt? Did Ned need to die to sort of wipe the slate clean and let Jon reset? Before I get into it, I'm curious what you think about that.
Because I think my main takeaway from this chapter is that Ned's death forced that reckoning within Jon, where he had to, the beginning of this chapter is he's got these two parallel senses of loyalty, or the way Old Bear talks about it, honor made you run away and honor brought you back.
Yeah.
I think this chapter pushes that conflict where he has to choose a side. So I think, because if Ned was still alive, there's still a sense of adults in the room. Where, yes, things are looking bad, but, Dad's here, and he'll pull it together, and he'll figure this out.
Yeah.
But now that Ned is gone, I think this is the moment where Jon feels like he has to step up and try to protect people like Arya and Sansa, who aren't ready to fill that void in the same way Jon, with his big sword and his big dog, that he thinks he might be ready to go help Robb. So I don't know. I kind of read it the other way.
Interesting. Yeah. No, it's hard to say. I mean, because like I said, it's not just Ned's death that causes Jon to turn. Like, it's confusing because it's like it's Ned's death that causes Jon to decide to desert. Like,
it's the call to action.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's actually, he has to fail at that attempt in order to come back and understand where he's actually meant to be. So it's like that sort of, I guess, accelerates the timeline. I think Jon would have tried to desert at one point or another for some other reason, before realizing, no, I'm meant to be here. And so I do think Ned's death is necessary for all of that to happen. Just how I think Ned's death is necessary for, everybody else's character arc in this story. Like, it's not just about Jon, but it's like that part of him has to die in order for him to figure out who he's really meant to be, because his mother, to his knowledge, is, for all intents and purposes, dead. Maybe this fictional woman that Ned slept with isn't dead, but it doesn't seem like Jon is ever going to know who she is or meet her, especially now that Ned has died and he's the only one who has that information. And also, we know Lyanna Stark, his real mother, is actually dead. And so mother is dead, and now his father also has to die. And so now he can sort of like move on and figure out where it is he's meant to be. That's sort of the way that I took it.
I think that's interesting. Yeah, this chapter, it reminded me of something that I think it's taken me a while to learn about storytelling. And actually, weirdly, I'm not just segueing into the plug, but I'm also doing that. It reminded me of something in Lemontards, where when a character comes up to an inflection point, I think the most satisfying or interesting thing for them to do sometimes is to take both courses of action. Whether it's they take one course of action, they fail, and they're pushed to go the other way, or they just try one and then change their mind. Because this idea of Jon has these two loyalties, he's pushed to this breaking point. This chapter sees him run in both directions. And so then it feels more satisfying for us because we know he's explored both of those paths. He's grappled with both of those courses of action. And I actually tried to do that constantly in Lemontards.
That's amazing.
But I really appreciated that just from a level of craft and outline within this chapter, because it does give you, as a reader, that sense of satisfaction and completeness where we've exhausted all our options. Instead of just saying the character is conflicted, we've seen him kind of running laps through this chapter.
Right. And what I also like is that it's not as though Jon fully disowns his Stark, identity. Like it's almost the knowledge that he is a Stark is part of what keeps him here at the Wall, or keeps him with the Night's Watch, because he does say things like he like apologizes in his mind to Ned and to Arya and to Bran and Robb that he can't help them. But it's the fact that he has this Stark blood is part of why he stays, because Old Bear like recognizes some of these important things about Jon that are like indicators that he's meant to be here. Old Bear says, "All I know is that the blood of the first men flows in the veins of the Starks. The first men built the wall, and it said they remember things otherwise forgotten. And that beast of yours, he led us to the Whites, warned you of the dead man on the steps. I think you were meant to be here, and I want you and that wolf of yours with us when we go beyond the wall." So Old Bear is recognizing Jon's blood of the first men in him, which comes from the Starks, and his direwolf, the sigil of, the house of House Stark. And he's like, those things are what mean you're meant to be here. What I love about that is not only is that like Jon has to accept that part of himself in order to really truly belong here, but it's also like, I know in the back of my mind, well, actually, it's not his father's blood, it's his mother's Stark blood. But he's got the blood of the first men, and he has the blood of old Valyria through his father, Rhaegar Targaryen. So Jon is like maxed out. He is a
lot of blood.
He is super powered here. So I know, yes, he is absolutely meant to be here. It's not just the blood of the first men, because Benjen Stark has blood of the first men. He's a Stark, but we know he's not going to make it, or he already has not made it. So it's not just the Stark thing. It's also this other Targaryen part of himself. And it's those two things, coexisting that are going to mean his success here. And so I think we often talk about Jon is trying to figure out, does he lean into the Stark side, the Targaryen side, the Night's Watch? Like, how does it all work? And I think the answer is all of it. And I think Jon's sort of recognizing that here. Of course, he doesn't recognize the Targaryen part quite so much, but it's less about him saying goodbye to a part of himself and more about him accepting this part of himself, but in the way that makes sense for him. He's not accepting himself as a Stark, as a fight alongside Robb Stark guy. He's accepting himself as the blood of the first men. Like, that's what it is.
And I think whatever it is, beyond his various lineage and the houses that he comes from, there is something original that he brings to the table. Mm-hmm. And what I really enjoyed about this chapter was Jon accepting who he is. Mm-hmm. When he's gaming out that scenario of, hey, if I do escape here and I have to live the rest of my life on the run under a pseudonym, I can never be honest about who I am. He's kind of describing Strider. This being the first book of what was originally conceived as a trilogy, I think it feels like Jon is slotting into that Aragorn. I mean, he is fated. He will be sort of a king in that way.
Yeah.
And that sense of non-identity, which is embracing where he comes from, but very much forging his own path forward. I thought there was a lot of Jon coming to terms with that here.
Interesting.
And I think that we're talking about him splitting the difference between all these identities. I think there's a sense of ownership there where he marries them all and creates something new instead of which side of the fence will he lean on. The path to survival is embracing the multitudes within him, and I think that's really starts here.
I agree, and I think we saw some of the roots of that, and it was maybe the last Jon chapter or the one before, where there's Maester Aemon is like handing out all of the stuff to the different ravens and stuff, and there's like all this talk about the left and right hands and Jon's burned hand, and we talked a lot about that as these different facets of Jon's identity. And you're right, it's them having to exist all together. I think that makes total sense. This was a really fun Jon chapter to read.
Beautiful ending. Maybe my favorite wrap-up chapter that we've had for a POV so far.
Certainly, yeah. It felt the most, prophetic and complete.
Sure. And it was as satisfying as it was exciting.
Yeah.
It was a great kind of doorstop in between these two novels. We only have 2 chapters left in this book. Next week, we're going to talk about the final Catelyn chapter, and then we're on to the final chapter, which is Dany chapter 10. And then, of course, as we have done for all of our fantasy journeys, we will be doing a retrospective, which is sort of looking back on this, I don't know, roughly 80-week journey that we've been on with this book, considering all of our major theories, our big ideas, our sweeping, what do we get right, what do we get wrong. But before we get there, this past Sunday, we dropped our latest bonus episode on Patreon. It was another breakfast buffet all about doomed romances, about Anna Karenina, Marie Antoinette, Vertigo from Hitchcock, and Phantom Thread from Paul Thomas Anderson. That was a fun episode. Go check that out. $2 a month, support the show, and get that whole series, as well as the whole Fire and Blood discussion series exclusive to the Patreon. But at the beginning of that episode, we did a 15-minute programming update explaining our full rationale. If you want the full thing, go check that out. But basically, we broke down our plans for how we're going to cover the rest of Game of Thrones because there's change in the air.
Yes. I'll give you just a brief rundown of it. Basically, the chapter by chapter that we've been doing since the beginning of the show, we are going to, at least for now, put a pause on that at the end of this book. Rather than reading Clash of Kings chapter by chapter, week by week, we are instead going to read it at a much more, normal pace, and we will cover the book however makes sense for us. Maybe we both read the whole thing and have an episode about it. Maybe we cover it in a few episodes. It depends on what mood strikes us. But it's coming down to, we will continue to talk about these books, but in the way that we talk about everything else on the show in our Tuesday episodes.
Think of our Dune episodes.
Right. Because when we covered Dune, we did the first Dune book in 3 episodes, and the others have all had 1 episode each. So it just depends on how we're feeling about it. But basically, every week we're going to continue to put out 2 episodes, one on Tuesday and one on Friday. Fridays, instead of being our fantasy chapter by chapter coverage, will be just like all of our Tuesday episodes. So it'll be about a movie, a TV show, a book, a game, a more conceptual episode. But it won't be the chapter by chapter anymore.
But we do plan on getting through the rest of this series and covering the other books. That is still the plan.
Yes, it's just TBD on what that's going to look like, but it won't be chapter by chapter.
Different format.
But
if you want that full discussion, that is over on Patreon. It's the first 15 minutes of that episode.
Yes, I'll also say we are planning to, whenever we've done these like fantasy, read-throughs, we always watch and then discuss the film or TV adaptations of those things. So we will be rewatching season 1 of Game of Thrones, and we will cover that over on our Patreon. We'll do an episode about season 1. We'll talk about it as an adaptation. That's going to be a lot of fun. So if you want that discussion, you can, again, join the Patreon for $2 a month.
Thank you very much for listening, for joining us on this journey. This is now the last month that we're in. This will wrap up in the month of April. Very excited. And also, it's very clean. I enjoy that too.
It is nice. Also, by the way, Lemon Tarts in Space, as Cam mentioned, is his latest book. You can purchase it through the link in the description. It is a light sci-fi dark comedy, and as Cam hinted at, it's got some wonderful story structure in there. You can read it as a regular book, or you can listen to the fully produced audio drama, which does star Cam and our good friend of the show, Tristan, who of course got married last weekend. Shout out to Tristan, or 2 weekends ago now. Anyway, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you thought of this chapter, what you think of this book as a whole.
What do you think of Ghost?
How's it wrapping up? If you're on YouTube, leave a comment below. Otherwise, shoot us an email or a DM. All of our contact info is in the description. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on Tuesday with another brand new episode.